Hello and welcome to the Raptors show on the Sportsnet Radio Network, brought to you by Campbell's new Chunky Spicy Soup. It's time to get fired up. Make sure you find the Raptors show wherever you listen to podcasts, and please rate and review the show. I'm your host, William Liu. I'm joined by co-host Blake Murphy. Big day on the show today. Raptors general manager Bobby Webster scheduled to call us in about 5 minutes or so. Yeah, Blake, you excited? What are you going to ask Bobby?
Just the cap minutia.
Yeah.
Just why did you take away Nando De Colo's cap hold for me last year? What is DeAndre Hewlett, who you still own the draft rights to from the year 2000? What's he up to? Is he in the plans for 2025? No, man, I want to know. Look, the word of the day yesterday for them, I guess I was going to say flexibility, but they said optionality. Yeah, and
That's not a real
I did
word,
my big annual post-deadline cap breakdown at sportsnet.ca, and it's true. There are a lot of different paths to making this team better, but that was part of the explanation for standing pat at last year's trade deadline. It was part of the explanation for rolling most of last year's roster back into this year, and I'm curious to dig in a little further on, hey, having a bunch of different paths to improve your team is a positive.
Yep.
But what is the timeline for establishing one of those paths and acting on that flexibility? And what does that look like? Because, $60 million in cap space sounds like a lot, but then when you get into cap holds and new contracts and potential trades and stuff like that, it's not, $60 million in cap space doesn't mean what $60 million in cap space means necessarily.
Yeah. Well, let's bring in somebody who might talk about more of this cap minutia with you. Bobby Webster, Raptors general manager, joining us on the Raptors show once again. Bobby, how are you doing?
What's up, fellas? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We have like a very vertically compressed version of you right now. So
it's all right. It's not you. You don't need to change your posture. It's
all good.
Yeah, it's
all
good.
You're Luigi, I'm Mario, essentially, right now, proportion-wise.
Does that make me Bowser? What is that?
You know what?
Anyway.
We only have 15 minutes with Bobby. We're going to use them wisely. Okay. So, Bobby, I wanted to start, before we get to the trade deadline, just what the plan coming into this season for you guys, because I was listening to the press conference you did yesterday, and you had mentioned that the season didn't get off to quite the start that you guys expected. So what level did the team need to play at for you guys to sort of choose a different path than what you guys chose to do this year at the deadline?
Yeah, I mean, it always comes down to wins and losses, right? And I think, you can envision some hypothetical record of where we were wins and loss-wise, where we felt like keeping the team together and continuing to build it would have led to a kind of different end result. But, we can rehash that if you want, but I think ultimately we saw it and it just wasn't quite working. And so we decided to, go in a different direction.
Okay, I don't want to rehash it too much, but I did want to ask, just for clarity, was there an approach in terms of a contract extension this season for either OG or Pascal Siakam before you guys ultimately chose to move on from them?
Yeah, I think we talked about with both of them prior to the season. I think OG was limited based on the rules of the CBA. So, he respectfully declined. And then with Pascal, we did have conversations, but ultimately, couldn't come to an agreement on a deal before the season.
So yesterday, obviously you make those deals, and you spoke yesterday that the heavy lifting was done earlier than the trade deadline. And the headline item for your trade deadline and around the league kind of was the deals that didn't get done. It wasn't a lot of trades, but not big names being moved. Bruce Brown is someone that you guys acquired in the Pascal trade that a lot of people seem to think would be eventually rerouted somewhere else at the deadline. And you said yesterday that, the threshold wasn't met for a Bruce Brown trade. I know you're not going to tell me, hey, we wanted this, exactly this, but, how close was that threshold, and how much did it seem like, that was a market-wide reality rather than just a Bruce Brown reality?
Yeah, a couple of things there. I think we saw there weren't a ton of big names moved yesterday. I think there's a lot of macro kind of NBA pro sport factors in play. But I think just back to Bruce, and, we just met with him here and, after shoot around, he's 27. He has incredible championship pedigree. There's a competitiveness. There's a two-way ability that we like with him. And so even when we did the trade with Indiana and we got Bruce back, there was always this scenario. And so I think ultimately, another team or a contender was, in essence, going to have to blow us away with an offer to get Bruce. Otherwise, I'm sure we'll get into it. He has an interesting contract here where this summer there's a lot of options to keep him, options to, hold on draft night while we consider other moves. But I think first and foremost, we've always liked Bruce as a player, and so we're excited to keep him for the rest of the season.
So those options, for anyone who doesn't know, you could pick up his team option and have him as a player. You could pick up his team option with the intent of trading him. You could walk away from it and have the cap space there. On the trade value front, would you anticipate he would have similar value around the league on draft night or on July 1st as he did, as you guys kind of canvassed the league at the deadline here?
Yeah, I think based on the offers we had, yesterday or just at least the discussions, you'd hope that he would maintain some of that value. You also hope that, maybe he plays his way into this core and is a part of our future. And maybe the one scenario you didn't go through was, declining the option and having the ability to re-sign him as well.
Mm. Okay, interesting. Lots of optionality with that one.
Yeah.
That was the key word. That was the topic that came out of your press conference a lot after yesterday. I want to ask about one of the moves that was made. So, you guys brought in Dennis Schroeder last year at Summer League. I remember him getting introduced, and Dennis, I think, even spoke then about coming in and wanting to start. And obviously, he was the starting point guard for the majority of the season before that change was made. And we've seen Darko speak glowingly about Dennis and also use him in a lot of high leverage situations. And I know you mentioned financial flexibility. Was there any other reasons why you guys chose to part ways with Dennis Schroeder in this deal?
I think going back to what you said, and Dennis came off an incredible summer. We had, really high hopes and expectations. I know Dennis had of himself as well. And so he's the ultimate, competitor. We've all seen him raise the level of our play. I think even in that last Charlotte game. But I think, ultimately he was brought in with the Pascal, OG, that team to sort of compete. And so probably just as our timeline the timeline of Dennis with us shifted, and, move him on, wish him the best, and we'll always follow and have a lot of love and support for Dennis.
Fair enough.
So in terms of what did come in, actually, sorry, I'm going to do one more on the kind of flexibility, if that's okay. So Dennis going out, clears a little bit of salary from next year's books. We talked about the Bruce Brown options there. You have Kelly Olynyk, who you were quick to highlight yesterday is extension eligible, and you could, lower that cap hit by signing him to a new deal potentially. Emmanuel quickly comes with a very small cap hold as a restricted free agent this year, which gives you guys some flexibility in the summer as well. I mean, going through this and going through my cap exercise and stuff, it really does seem like you guys have placed a premium on that flexibility and the ability to take a couple different paths in July. Is that a fair read on kind of the spirit behind these moves as a collective?
100%. And I've, stood up here before and said the same thing probably for the past, 10 years. And I think it's something we've always valued as a franchise. Until you're ready to lock into a team that you think is really a high-level competitive team, this is probably the best approach. And especially with the new CBA, and there's a ton of restrictions and not spending a lot of money and just having flexibility if you can, take advantage of other teams who have spent too much and maybe need to, get off salaries and attach players or attach, assets to it. So, the second trade deadline is always draft night. And so we'll be well positioned on draft night, to hopefully take advantage of this. There's no guarantee we do, but I think just having that option, and we saw it this year at the deadline, we had some deals we turned down where we could use some of that, theoretical cap space next season to take on picks. But ultimately, we hope those deals will still be there in June, and we'll have another shot at it.
Okay, I wanted to ask about one of the two pieces you guys brought in, Ochai Agbaji. How long have you guys been tracking Ochai and his progress, and what do you see as his long-term trajectory in this league?
Yeah, I know for me at least, our scouts brought him to me his freshman season at Kansas. He kind of started to get some opportunities off the bench, and then he ends up with a really illustrious career at Kansas. I think culminating most outstanding player in the tournament. And then he gets drafted and he gets put in the Donovan Mitchell trade. So we're watching him the whole time. I think we feel like he fits kind of the two-way Raptors mold. Loves to play defense. Developing offensively. Can make a three-point shot. And we just feel like in this environment with Darko and where we're going, age-wise, energy, excitement, he'll fit right in with this core.
Is the challenge for him, in his next stage developmentally going to be, you mentioned the defense, transition-wise, he's incredible from the tape. Looks like a pretty good team-level defender. Are you guys hoping he can turn into, one of your primary point of attack guys on defense as well?
Yeah, I think that he's when you see him, he's blessed with a lot of physical capabilities. He's a great athlete. He's big. He's strong. So I think that's kind of, as we all know, the effort on the defensive end, the ability to lock in. That should travel. That should be night to night. And then the offensive end fitting in around someone like Scotty Barnes and quickly who can make a shot. And as he develops more offensively, he'll provide some additional shot creation.
Okay. And I want to ask about the other piece too, in Kelly Olynyk. I know you guys already talked about the flexibility, the optionality. Do you see Kelly as a piece of the team next year and beyond?
Yeah, we wouldn't do the deal if we didn't see that, right?
Okay.
I think from a skill set, talked about it a little yesterday with Scotty and talking to Scotty today, is we haven't had a sort of skilled stretch five around him. I think there's a bit of veteran presence also we lose when you do, you lose Dennis and Thad. So we want to maintain some structure around relatively young core. It's not a bunch of rookies and second year guys, but they're between 22, 27, 28. So it's kind of twofold, which is he provides a skill set and then kind of a steadying hand for us.
Okay, well, on the subject of Scotty, so much discussion around building around Scotty. You guys are clearly making a very intentional effort on that front. I want to ask you guys, what role do you see him playing long term? You mentioned yesterday, for example, you would like to see potentially some more reps of him running point again, which may open up based on the trade deadline. But what long-term role do you see for Scotty Barnes?
Yeah, I think we're all seeing it now, but I think Scotty projects as a really unselfish hub, and you can run a lot of things around him, whether it's him as the primary ball handler, whether he's a secondary ball handler in the half court. Our job now is to surround him with the right skill set and personnel that fit his strengths. And I think, big moment this week with Scotty being named as an all-star in just his third NBA season. I think it's probably a pretty esteemed group that, he joins. And so it's how do we, grow him? How do we raise him in an environment here where we're getting the best out of him on the court, but also, teaching him leadership skills, being a great teammate. So those are all the challenges you have with Scotty, but we feel really strongly that the base with Scotty is a really high floor.
So when it comes to his, kind of fit with these new pieces, we can see the center position now, right? Like Jakob Poeltl's back healthy, Kelly Olynyk's in here. We all know Kelly's game really well. The way the depth chart looks right now, and I think you mentioned it briefly yesterday, maybe a little bit more room for Scotty as, point guard or de facto point guard, whatever you want to, however you want to frame that. As you look longer term, does the focus become on finding more shooting around that, more defending around that, or are you guys still kind of figuring that out as you see what Scotty looks like with IQ, with Kelly, with RJ here?
Listen, at the highest level, you need two-way guys. You need to be able to defend at a high level. I think, you're always going to see us put a premium on shooting around Scotty going forward. But I don't think it's just as simple as just, catch and shoot. You need dynamic players who can cut off the ball, who can create on their own as well. And I think, you see different scenarios around the league with players similar to Scotty. You do need a mix of shooting, but you do need some other, creation around him.
Okay, well, to that point, you might have already answered it, but why did you target Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett as the specific surrounding pieces around Scotty? Like, what specifically do they do that you like that fits with his projected skill set and his current skill set?
Yeah, I think going back to that deal, we saw two players, 23, 24 years old, who had an opportunity to grow. And in New York, I think it's very clear what their kind of pecking order is. And so we were looking for players around the league, not necessarily specifically in New York, but players that, if given more opportunity, could really blossom. And so I think with, Emmanuel and RJ, they both, hopefully people have seen over the past, few weeks here, and we haven't had a whole team together just yet. But there is more scoring. There's more shot creation. There's an ability to play as starters as opposed to coming off the bench. So a number of reasons, but I'd say primarily age, and just putting them, up a slot kind of in order on the team.
Okay, this is jumping around, but you just brought it up. Can we expect to see, Kelly and Ochai available for tonight's game? Is that are we a little too eager, or what's going on?
Fingers crossed.
Okay.
It takes two to tango. So they're in Toronto, so they will be at the game tonight. There's a bunch of NBA rules around trades, so they do have to pass a physical, and the guys in Utah need to pass a physical. But we're hopeful that they'll be available.
Okay. And then I think the last question around Scotty, this is maybe more of a question from Masai, but we have you here and I wanted to ask you as well. Masai, when he talked in his press conference about a few weeks back, he mentioned that he kind of wished that he had foresaw this jump from Scotty to all-star level, which we're seeing right now, a little bit earlier. And I guess my question to that is, do you think that would have changed anything in terms of the team building strategy? For example, if Scotty had made this jump the last year instead of this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting what if. I think where I kind of started this conversation with Scotty is he's an all-star in his third NBA season. And, if you want to look at the players who were all-stars in the second NBA season, now you're talking about, very, very, top 5 players in the league now. And so I think it'd be a bit unfair to say, this was expected of Scotty or, we wish he would have done that. So no, I think what's the line? Development is not linear. And I think we're happy with, whatever winding curve got him to be an all-star in year 3.
Yeah, no doubt. But I think, by the way, did Scotty also say that you're the one who broke the news that he was the all-star?
Yeah.
How'd that go?
So the NBA calls you and they say, congratulations. And they say, can we get Scotty on the phone? They actually say, can we get Scotty on the phone to see if he accepts, as if someone wouldn't accept. And so I'd actually been texting with Scotty earlier that day. And so you can probably imagine this generation of kid doesn't like to pick up the phone. So I texted him and I said, pick up, I'm calling. And I had the NBA on the line and he had no idea. And I said, Scotty, I have the, president of basketball ops for the NBA on. And I don't know if he thought he was getting in trouble or whatnot. And so I click over and they say, we'd like to invite you to Indianapolis for the All-Star game. And, do you accept? And he was on the team bus, I think, in Charlotte.
Right.
And it's one of those, I always just imagine one of those cool moments where, you're in sort of a private setting. You can't necessarily share with everybody. It's not the most, humble thing to yell out on the bus that, hey, I just was announced as all-star, but I could just tell sort of through the phone, the excitement he had. And he was really energetic and, told the NBA he couldn't wait to be there and let's go and all the stuff you can imagine Scotty would say.
Got you. Well, we have one last question for you, not on Scotty, but just one last one about the past. Obviously, Fred VanVleet returns to Toronto for the first time since leaving this past summer. I want to get it on the record. Who in the front office should get the most credit for discovering the now highest paid undrafted player of all time?
We don't do that. We all take the credit and we all take the responsibility.
Ooh.
All right, I got a question maybe you will answer. Actually, this is also a non-trade deadline question before we let you go here. Man, I know you guys have a game the Friday in Miami and a game the Sunday in Miami, but April 13th, UFC 300, our guy, Max Holloway, Raptors super fan for the BMF belt, and you can watch it on Sportsnet and Sportsnet Plus, obviously. See you in Vegas or what?
That would be quite the weekend. Friday night, Miami, Saturday in Vegas. I don't know if you're making it back for the game Sunday.
We got a whole off season after that, though, to or play in maybe but a whole off season to recover. So,
well, yeah, go Max. We're always there supporting him. So I would love to go to that if I can, but sometimes duty calls. So.
Okay, all right.
We'll be rooting for him, man.
Bobby, appreciate you. We'll see you down at the game tonight.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Okay, Raptors general manager Bobby Webster. Well, he didn't answer. Do you have an answer for me? Who should get the most credit for discovering Fred? Because you know what I mean? Because the reason I asked it, because there's a lot of people who have some claim to it.
So discovering, I don't he played in the NCAA tournament, Wichita State.
I know. But
I'm gonna lean with my guy Tolzman.
Okay.
Because at that point, not only was he on the road a lot doing the scouting and doing a lot of the G League level, kind of steering those signings and stuff like that. But Fred was as much a G League success story and summer league program success story as he was NBA success story, right? Like he came in. It's not like they grabbed him and they were like, we know this is a guy. He got $50K guaranteed.
Yeah.
That's it. He was an Exhibit 10 guy. And then, DeLon was hurt and he was in there competing against Heslip and Crawford and those guys.
The son of the referee.
Yeah.
Joey Crawford.
Yeah.
Drew Crawford, that's what his name is.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Tolzman, between the scouting and the voice in the draft room and being the guy who was kind of operating the 905 at that point, I'll give him the tiny bit extra share of the credit.
Here's the thing. I knew he wasn't going to answer it, and I was going to follow up with you afterwards. And that really is very consistent with Bobby, because we also had him for a live show last year, and thankful for Bobby for doing that. And I asked him who should get the credit for the Kawhi trade, and he gave me a very similar answer. So, but these are the key questions, you know?
Well, here's the thing: is the Kawhi trade, and no one has ever told me this. This is we know the Masai story, right? He's in Africa with Obama.
Yes,
when this first comes down, and then the pacing to tell DeMar.
Mm-hmm.
But Masai's got to sign off on the Kawhi for DeMar framework. I'm giving Bobby credit for the fact that San Antonio also had to throw in $5 million.
Oh, that $5 million went directly as a bonus for that year. That should be. Okay, that's all the past. I mean, listen, I try to ask him a little bit about just the recent past, because obviously we did start the season with guys like Dennis, OG, Pascal, they're all gone. Just to get a little bit more clarity in terms of their situations. But then also obviously focus on what's ahead with building around Scotty. Do you want to start with the past, or you want to start with the future?
Let's start with the past.
Okay. OG declined the extension.
Yeah, which makes sense. I've been writing about that for a while. That even with we thought maybe the new CBA would make it a possibility. What was the most that they could
have offered again?
It would have been a 40% raise, which obviously sounds like if anyone is listening wants to come down and offer us a 40% raise, we'll take that. But the way the salary, given OG was on an undervalued contract, he's probably going to beat that in free agency.
Okay.
They got to do more about the extension rules. I think.
Sure.
I get it. You don't want teams to be in cap hell because they made mistakes, but to re-sign your own guy, I don't know why in a soft cap league we ever have restrictions on that.
See, the reason I'm with you on that is because I actually want them to take the training wheels off of these front offices in a way, because at that point you can get a better sense of who's more responsible and who's less responsible. And I think that should create natural competitive advantages.
Yeah.
That you should be able to reap rewards from, rather than just you're always in these you're bowling with guardrails on.
Yeah. And there's a homogeneity in front office strategy where part of the reason the deadline was quiet. Look, some of it is the economics of the new CBA. Yeah. Some of it is there just aren't enough bad teams with interesting players.
Sure.
But a lot of it is also that
non-contenders now, basically
25 of the 30 GMs see roster building similarly. And you can't go over a 4-year contract except in very specific situations. And I get it. It's a capped system, so you're always going to have some guardrails. But this is there's a max salary and a minimum salary. And I think this is a Bernie Lee comment, Jimmy Butler's agent from the past.
Yep.
There could be a max salary, a minimum salary, and you can have the cap and the tax and the apron. But anything between max and min, if a guy's willing to sign and a team's willing to give it, cool. And then if you've got to sell something and you've got to attach draft picks later to get out of it, we don't need to relive the Allen Houston provision in the CBA where the Knicks get. By the way, James Dolan wants to complain about the NBA not being able to handle the Raptors situation correctly because of Adam Silver's relationship with Larry Tannenbaum and the CBA. Yeah. They invented a get out of jail free salary cap card for the Knicks, in the 2011 CBA.
Yes. I think we used that on
Linus Kleza.
Instead of Andrea Bargnani, who was, I think, the guy that everyone thought it was going to be used on because he had a bigger salary. And instead, Masai actually flipped him to New York for, the pick became Pirtle. Pirtle kind of became Kawhi, whatever.
Anyway, so this is not what you wanted to ask me about, but I do think it's it's not good for team building and for players or teams that you can't just if you want to keep your guys, you can't go past the max salary. Let them keep your guys.
Okay, so there's that aspect. The Dennis aspect makes a lot of sense the way Bobby's explaining it. Right, they wanted to be competitive with that group. They went into the season. They saw it didn't work. They pivoted, and of course, if you're going to pivot off your core long-term mainstays in OG and Pascal, of course, you're going to also pivot off of Dennis as well. I saw he made it to New York in record time, by the way.
Yeah, he already did media availability last night.
As Dennis would say, he was in New York at the end of the day.
At the end of the day?
Yeah, he was at the end of the afternoon, he was already there. The other aspect, so around Scotty in particular, with some of the, pieces. So Kelly seems like he's going to be here, right? He's going to be re-signed. Of course, you acquire him with the idea that, it's not a grand conspiracy. Canadian boy, Toronto boy wants to potentially stick around. Makes a lot of sense. Ochai, bringing in for the defensive profile. And we'll see sort of offensively there's some growth and steps there. That makes sense. The discussion around building around Scotty Barnes and those specific pieces. It's interesting hearing him talk about the role because that's one of the things with Scotty. He can do so many things it's not just like, well, we're going to pin him only at one position. First off, I'm sure front office don't even talk about positions in that way anymore.
Nobody talks about the 5 traditional positions. Like you've got like, and even yesterday when we were going over the roster, like I didn't split it into the 5 positions where it's like, okay, you have a guy who's only a point guard in Emmanuel Quickly. You have some like guard/wings. You have some wing/forwards. You have some bigs, and you have Scotty Barnes, who you could drop him in whichever of those buckets you want, depending on the need. It gives you some roster building optionality.
By the way, I looked it up. Optionality is an actual word. I don't know why I didn't think it was an actual word. I'm looking, when you search a word on like Google, it'll give you that graph of like, how much that word was used over time, right? No uses of optionality in 1800s. No uses up until 1900. 1950 moves around. 1960 starts to come up more and more. It's mostly a finance term, I feel like.
This is like the CBA and finance.
Right? This is the George Orwell
version
doublespeak that they wrote of.
But this is like the finance version of like players and coaches use the word comfortability a lot now. Yeah. It's like you just say comfort. It means the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
We don't need the ability at the end.
Yeah, well, it happens.
Anyway,
putting aside the grammar stuff.
I'm clearly in a Friday mode here where you keep asking me real questions, and I'm like, we can bring up the Merriam-Webster definition of optionality.
What am I doing? You're right. Friday
vibes are usually 1,000 degrees in here. I'm very warm and uncomfortable. It's anyway.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I appreciate Bobby for coming on. Again, I want to say that that was not our. We did not make Bobby vertically stretched. Okay, I want to be very clear. Yeah. This is not like a Scrap to show responsibility. That was out of our hands. I promise.
If we could do that, I would make myself thinner on TV all the time.
Do you like Bobby in a funhouse mirror?
I would look 6'3" and thinner instead of 5'10" and the shape that I am.
All right. Well, we're going to pivot off of that shape. And we're going to take a break? Or what else?
Yeah, so I want to tease what we got coming up.
Yeah,
so at 3 o'clock, we're going to talk to Sarah Todd, a friend of mine from, she covered the Sixers during the Toronto Raptors championship run. So got close with all those Sixers people and then the Bucks people, of course. Yeah. Obviously the Raptors beat both of those teams on their way to winning an NBA championship.
But old history. Yeah, I love that part.
She covers the Jazz now. So we'll get the Jazz side of this, learn a little bit more about Agbaji.
Sounds great.
And then, at the end of the show, we've got some Fred VanVleet clips from, he spoke earlier today.
Oh, wow. The media's going to talk about Fred?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But what we're going to do in the next segment.
Today, right? This is a reason for that.
Yeah. What we're going to do in the next segment is there's a new dynamic here. And if we assume everyone's playing, we got to reimagine what this rotation is going to look like. And you and I talked yesterday about the kind of minutes crunch that are going to happen across the 2, 3, 4 positions. So what we're going to do is we're going to start from scratch and we're going to rebuild the rotation. We're going to find out where those trade-offs are, where those pressure points are on Darko's new rotation. We're going to try to come up with one ourselves.
Okay, sounds good. We are going to pretend to be coaches after this break, but I've been your host, Willow. You've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network, brought to you by Campbell's new Chunky Spicy Soup. Welcome back to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Swim Lou. Big thanks once again to Bobby Webster, Raptors GM, and also Raptors PR for helping set that up. It's good to get some clarity on the decision-making, at least that went into the Raptors roster. Now me and Blake Murphy, co-hosts, are going to actually go through the exercise of, deciding how the minutes are going to be. I mean, and it's only like 30-odd games left in the season. Might be some absences, blah, blah, blah. But just in general, just take a bigger look in terms of who do we got now, how much should each guy play. And Blake, explain to me why you wanted me to not prepare for this at all, to do this like right on the spot, like fresh omakase style.
Because, because I think it's a more helpful exercise for us and for listeners, I hope, when we're doing it in real time and you get to see some of the pressure points and trade-offs that you have to make. So I used to do this when I was at the Athletic. Every Raptors preseason, an exercise I would do is let's sit down and craft the rotation. And I would come up with like the actual specific rotation patterns. Like here's who's starting. Here's what, Kyle on the bench looks like this year, that kind of stuff. And through doing that, I would take like an hour to do it and sit down with it, because you really do be like you're setting it up and you're like, oh, okay, but if I do this, then, this unit doesn't have enough spacing or this unit doesn't have enough ball handling. So obviously we can't do it that specifically in a 20-minute segment, but I thought it would be helpful for the audience to hear and feel when we run into those kind of walls a little bit of, oh, that's why maybe Darko doesn't do this, or Nick didn't do that, or Dwayne didn't do that, because if you do this, then you have to do this, or if you do this, you can't do that. So we're going to do like an expedited version of it here.
Okay.
So let's start with this. Who is starting for you?
Who is in the starting lineup?
Oh, by the way, so the assumption right now is that the Raptors are So we're doing this. You have 240 minutes in a game, so 48 minutes times 5 guys. We're assuming the game is close until the end. We're not going to do a garbage time scenario. So assume that the game is close until the end, and it is up to you how much you want to balance win now versus player development.
Yeah.
But you're not tanking. Like, you're not trying to lose the game. It's more the decisions you're making are more about player development versus veterans kind of thing. So that is the layout we're in here. So most recently, the Raptors were starting Emmanuel Quickley, Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, Jakob Poeltl, and Gary Trent, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that still your starting 5?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think that actually changes based on this trade. I think you might look in the future to see if you can like put Grady in that spot for Gary, or you might look to see if you want to see how Ochai would fit with the starters. You might see that, but right now I think you give it to Gary.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's start with Scotty. How many minutes is a reasonable, like, we're going to go kind of from the top down here and start this way. So how many minutes for Scotty Barnes do you think is reasonable?
I'm going to say 36.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about IQ and RJ?
Quickly, I'm probably going to give him probably 30, 34.
Okay.
Yeah.
RJ?
RJ, I'm probably going to give like the same number, 34.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about Gary?
Gary, I like Gary in like a 28 kind of range. 28.
Okay. And then Jakob?
Jakob, probably, let's say 30. Let's say 30 on the dot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why is my sum function not working?
There you go.
There we go. Okay. So that's
the other sum 41.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's already 162 minutes.
That's
so
fine,
you have 78 minutes left to give to the bench. So 4 guys at about 20 minutes each.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's where you're starting line. So who is your priority? Actually, let's start at center, because I think that's the easiest one. Is Kelly Olynyk filling all 18 of the other minutes? You gave Jakob 30.
Yes.
Okay.
Because especially hearing from Bobby, a lot of the discussion was, the idea of like get him a new piece of stretch 5 around Scotty. So obviously long term, it's not going to be Kelly in terms of like 3, 4, 5 years down the line. But at least does that archetype of player, a stretch 5, bring something different out of Scotty? Something I've also been personally curious about as well. So yeah, 18 minutes makes a lot of sense.
Okay. So we also have 14 minutes at the point guard position to fill.
Yeah.
Because Emmanuel, like the 3 wing positions will be easy to fill because you can mix them. So let's start with let's go to next to the point guard position.
Yeah.
There are 14 additional minutes there.
Yeah.
I assume one of the 2 open roster spots is going to be for a point guard, but it might be like a G League developmental type. So let's not consider that right now. Marquise Noel is injured, but for the purposes of this exercise, you can use him if you want.
Okay.
There's also Garrett Temple. Javon Freeman Liberty is kind of more of a combo guard. And then you also have Bruce Brown and Scotty Barnes, who you can use. And so you've given Scotty 36 minutes. Are you using some of those where he's the point guard?
Yeah, I'm going to option 10 of those minutes.
Okay.
To Scotty at point guard. So those are going to be, let's just move those to the wing or something. Because, I'm going to, part of I gave Scotty 36 minutes?
Yes.
Yeah, I want 10 of those to be at point guard.
Okay. So this gives him 26 then on the wing, and we'll fill in the other wing minutes last because those, again, those are easier to fill. So you still have 4 point guard minutes to fill.
Yeah. Those can go to Bruce Brown.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine sometimes he'll run point, I suppose. That's more of an accounting purpose.
Yes. Okay. So we have 56 minutes still to dole out.
Okay.
We have 6 players in the rotation right now. All of those minutes are coming on the wing or 2, 3, 4. We're not drawing a difference between 2, 3, 4 because the way the Raptors play, those are pretty interchangeable. And for this exercise, it's not all that important. Who is the next most important player to you to get minutes? And we haven't given any minutes yet to Grady Dick, Ochai Agbaji, Jordan Nwora, Jalen McDaniels, Chris Boucher, Jonte Porter.
Realistically, it's probably going to be Ochai. I think from a coach's perspective. Ahead of Grady. I mean, he's older than Grady. He's ahead of him in the developmental curve. And I think that because this team functionally is just like a little bit weaker on defense and offense, if I've had to guess, a coach will probably be giving Ochai more minutes. So I'm giving him like in 20 minutes. 20 minutes.
20
Let's
minutes.
say 20 minutes.
You gave Bruce Brown at 4 minutes at point guard. How many other minutes is he playing?
In this team?
Yeah.
No,
on the 2025 Clippers. I don't know. Yes, on this team.
Hold on. Can we skip that first and go to Grady? Because I feel like it depends on how many minutes I give Grady.
Okay. How many minutes are you giving Grady?
I'm giving Grady like a solid 16, 17 minutes right now.
Okay, let's go 17.
With the option to scale up and down, but whatever.
Yeah,
obviously.
I mean,
on
all of
average,
this has like a guy's cooking in the third quarter, so he plays more in the fourth. Okay, well, so we'll give Grady 17 for right now.
How many minutes do I got left?
You have 19 minutes left to give out. So you have only given Bruce Brown 4 minutes so far.
Yeah.
And you've given none to Wara, McDaniels, Boucher, Porter, Freeman, Liberty, Temple, Noel.
Yeah. So the rotation is already 8 deep, currently as is.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to give, realistically, the remainder of the minutes go to Bruce Brown. So War is, you don't really have minutes for War.
Okay. So that would be, 19 there, so he plays 23.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what your rotation would look like. Give me 1 second. Had a hiccup, sorry. Scotty Barnes playing 36 minutes, 10 at point guard, 26 at, there are 0 small ball center minutes anymore because Olynyk.
Kelly will be the small ball center lineup.
Yeah. And Kelly and Scotty can do some fun stuff as like 4-5 action or whatever. Emmanuel Quickly playing 34 minutes. RJ Barrett playing 34. Jakob playing 30.
Yep.
Gary Trent playing 28. Bruce Brown playing 23, 4 of those at the point guard as the kind of pseudo point guard in bench units.
Yeah.
The other 19 coming across the wing positions. Ochai playing 20 minutes. Kelly Olynyk playing 18, functionally as the backup center. And then Grady playing 17. And then, so that leaves you Wara, McDaniels, Boucher, Jonte, Temple, Noel, and Freeman Liberty, and whatever 2 new guys they sign with nothing. So this is a 9-man rotation. There are 9 guys playing 17 minutes or more. But you have... those other guys who are not in the rotation. You don't have a Jordan Wara getting an opportunity. You don't have Chris Boucher back in the mix here.
So 10th man wise, I think if an opportunity does come up, I would like to get Wara some minutes. I think that the scenario there would be he probably eats out of Gary's plate, probably eats a little bit out of Bruce Brown's plate.
Okay. So why don't I
don't want it to come out of Grady's budget.
So would you like to, through this exercise, create a few minutes for Jordan Wara right now? Do you want to do that?
I don't. Okay, yeah, we can. But I mean, let's do it for the sake of the show. But I do think functionally a 9-man rotation is probably most reasonable.
So Scotty has been averaging 35 minutes. You have been at 36. You want to take 1 minute off and give it to Jordan Wara?
Fine.
You sound so begrudging about that.
Why do I want less of Scotty, man? I want him to play as much as possible.
But you also want him to be fresh and late in the fourth quarter and stuff like that.
Fresh for, man. We're not making playoffs.
Well, you won't. Yeah, you want him to be good. Okay, so you have RJ at 34. He's been averaging 34 since he came over. That seems fine. You have Quickly at 34. He's only been averaging 31 and a half since he came over. Do you want to trim that a little bit?
No, I actually want to see Quickly play more.
Okay.
So I think I'm going to keep him as is. Yeah.
Okay. You have Jakob at 28. He's been averaging 26 and a half. You want to trim a couple there, or are you good at 28?
I mean, that's not going to go to Wara, so.
No, I'm just, as we're going through it. I actually think a couple of those might go to Kelly. I think it might be more like a 26-22 kind of split.
Yeah, that's fine. Kelly was, playing 20 minutes per game with the Jazz?
Yeah, something like
that. Yeah. But the Jazz also had a deeper front court, no doubt.
Yeah.
Laurie, they also
he was averaging
Kessler.
20.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, fine. Yeah, we can move those around slightly.
Okay, we'll just move them.
We've so far found 1 extra minute for Jordan Wara. This is tough.
Yeah, so this is why I like doing this exercise, right? Is like
you get into 60 seconds of madness.
Yeah. Okay, so Gary Trent you have for 28 minutes. He was only
a little high, I feel like.
He was averaging 26. So do you want to take a couple of his minutes away?
We'll take 2 more minutes away.
Okay.
Sorry, Gary.
So, okay.
He'll still start, though. As long as Gary starts, he's great. If he comes off the bench, he's not going to be useful. But, he's still starting in my rotation.
Okay, you have Bruce Brown at 23. He was averaging 26 and a half since he got here. So you okay leaving him at 23?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, Ochai at 20, Kelly at 20, Grady Dick at 17. You would have 3 minutes for Jordan Wara.
Yeah, that's my point. I think the 9-man rotation is fine. When there's injuries, other guys will slide in. That's why he's my 10th guy.
So this is why I like to do this exercise, though, because you see, we're definitely going to see questions tonight if the new guys play of why didn't Jordan Wara get a look? It's post deadline. Dennis is in here. Whoever, why isn't Jordan Wara? This is why, right? If you add a 10th man to the rotation, maybe you have a little bit of a disgruntled Bruce Brown, or there's not enough room for both centers.
Yeah.
Who knows? Like you say, game to game, this stuff's going to swing. But I do find this to be a helpful exercise because we will get questions tonight. Hey, why didn't Wara play more? Why didn't Chris Boucher play more, et cetera?
Well, this is part of the impetus behind, potentially trying to move off of some of your current pieces, right? I guess we didn't hear much trade rumor about Gary, so we could keep him out of it, although I think that could have been a possibility. But of course, Bruce Brown was discussed so much. And it's like, if you took Bruce out of this situation, all of a sudden you have like probably 20 more minutes per game. Well, 20, what I give him, 23?
23.
Yeah, yes, we have 23 more developmental minutes per game to spread
Grady
around.
bumps up to 20. Jordan Nora's maybe getting 12.
Yeah.
You know,
Ochai's getting a little bit more time as well. So, of course, not all development needs to happen on the court. I feel like that's something that, I have to say every year. But, yeah, I mean, otherwise you have Bruce, and you're not going to just not use him. So
No.
he's better than a lot of the other guys.
And like, look, I get that there will be people who, who want to tank or want to see the young guys, or like Bruce Brown's 27. And if there is even a 1% chance that you would want to pick up the option and keep him next year because you want to be good again next year, you think he'll have more value at the deadline or whatever, you don't want to like immediately disgruntle a guy by being like, hey, you're in the prime of your career. We don't want you to play. That's not. And Bobby basically said as much yesterday. He was like, we need to see these guys together. They've been very straightforward that like they know they don't control their pick. And even if you like look at the reverse standings right now, you're not bottoming out more than one more spot.
Yeah,
you're just not catching the team like Charlotte, San Antonio, Detroit, and Washington are not winning 18 games this year.
Right.
They're just not going to do it. So you can maybe catch Portland, but even that feels a little unlikely. So yeah, okay. So that's what the rotation looks like, and obviously guys will be in and out. Guys will get some more minutes.
Is there a different way you would have wanted to do this? Like anything that sticks out broadly?
No, not really.
Okay.
I would probably like just for the sake of seeing more guys, I might trim a little bit off of RJ and Gary, and maybe even get Bruce Brown to like 22 or something like that, just to get a look at another. But not really. Like I think this is pretty reasonable.
Okay.
Nice. Your young guys are playing the most. The only spot in the rotation where you're like, well, that's a little bit old for that position is center, but you are heavily invested in Jakob Poeltl and Kelly Olynyk, and those guys I think will really help the other. Like we've seen how much Poeltl helps everyone else when he's back healthy. I think Kelly Olynyk will do that for the bench units as well, because he's just he's such a good offensive organizer and just like sees and thinks the game at such a high level. Like again, to go back to the Jonte thing, like when he came up, I was like, you got to hope he could be like a poor man's Kelly Olynyk stylistically with the IQ and the passing and stuff like that.
Jonte's kicking himself. He's like, damn, I had clear backup minutes and now I don't.
Yeah, but I mean, your back's going to spasm. Your back's going to spasm.
Okay. Right.
Also, like the 905 could really use him.
That's not what he's trying to hear right now.
No, it's not. But that is probably a part of the plan for Jonte Porter now. That I think it's
that was always part of the plan for sure.
It's helpful to have him around Kelly Olynyk, another guy for him to learn from and stuff.
Oh yeah, wasn't Darko calling him Thad Young Jr.
at some point? Yeah.
Yeah, he was like he's around Thad so much. Thad's in his ear. They're both lefties. They both jump the same vertical somehow.
Postage stamp vertical. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's good for him. I think he'll probably see some more 905 time. And obviously, we didn't find a way to create minutes for Marquise and Javon Freeman-Liberty, even with only one true point guard on the roster here. Maybe that changes. My other question that this is not rotation related, because I doubt they're going to sign people to these spots that come in and play minutes unless Kyle decides he doesn't want to compete. He just wants to come home. I don't
come on home, buddy.
Yeah, I don't think that's likely, but for our purposes, that'd be just fine. They have,
dude, I'll blow up the entire rotation for Kyle Lowry, man.
They
40 minutes for Kyle.
They have 2 open roster spots now.
Yeah.
They have 2 weeks to fill the first one. I think they'll move more quickly than that, but with the All-Star break ahead, like maybe they just chill and talk to some guys and look at, I don't know. Like they could sign Justice Winslow to a 10-day, call him up from Mississauga, basically even just to like give him a little bonus. Like they've got so much room under the tax now that they could, even if you didn't even care to see them play, like Justice Winslow, Mo Gay, hey, we appreciate what you did with the 905 this year. Come up, get a 10-day, and that's it while we figure out who we want. Aside from that, though.
Be a classy thing to do for sure.
Yeah, I would love to see Justice Winslow up tonight. Like just, hey, here's, the $80K that you make off a 10-day contract. Thanks for being a good vet and a good leader.
$80K for 10 days. Damn.
I mean, it might even be higher than that given Justice Winslow's service time. Like it's it's $58K if you are a rookie and get a 10-day. So if someone in Justice's position getting, okay, so with those 2 spots, we just went through this exercise and looked at the depth chart. Am I right to assume you would like one of those spots to be used on a point guard who you could at least get in the system and see a little bit, see what's there developmentally and insurance in case, like what would this all look like if Emmanuel quickly like missed the game right now?
I mean, you would get Scotty a point finally. which I suppose you could also just intentionally do.
Also, like, there's no reason that like if you want to see more of it, Emmanuel Quickley could like play the de facto 2 guard offensively and just be the point guard offensive or defensively.
A point guard prospect. I mean, sure, I guess. Yeah, I think you already have Javon, so I feel like he probably is like. It's hard to just bring in somebody.
He's not really a point guard, though.
I know,
he's more of a slasher, cutter, offensive rebound. Like he's good. I've been very clear. I like Javon Freeman Liberty. But he is like he's like a combo guard at furthest. Like he's a point guard because of size. He's a combo guard by skill set.
I mean, look, we're talking about the 14th and 15th spots on the roster. I think for me, I would love to see a pipeline, like just another big in the developmental pipeline. Yeah, I want to start there. I'm very encouraged by the fact that they got Jonte in, and I'm like, I'm actually okay with Jonte being like a third stringer next year, and maybe with the option to get up to a backup position if he really breaks out. Like, I like that, and the fact that they already got that in the door, I feel like it just another one would be nice. Yeah, maybe like a shot blocking version, like an athletic. I guess he blocks shots too, but
not the same way.
Yeah, not the same way. Exactly.
Yeah. He's more like ground bound, the swipe, steal, block type, and just like being sound positionally.
Yeah.
We did this exercise when Yak first got hurt. It's pretty bleak at the big man position in the G League right now. Like a name toward the top of my list was like Trey Jamison, who's starting at center for the Grizzlies now.
Oh, great.
Yeah, like it's a little thinner at center than other positions. That's historically the case in the G League, especially with the third two-way spot now. But yeah, it probably makes sense to give someone a look. Do you have, just because I've got asked this a lot on Twitter, I will ask you, with one of those open roster spots, do you have any sort of interest in kicking the tires on Killian Hayes?
What are we doing? I mean, no. I feel like, okay, first off, I didn't realize this, but like, after all trade deadline happened yesterday, I'm like, after we went off air at 4, just sat at the office, put my legs up, and I was just like, all right, man, like let me scroll like social media for a while. So I opened up like NBA Reddit, and like the number one upvoted thing was Killian Hayes got waived, and I was like, what? Like, why has he become this big of a meme?
Wait, that was on Raptors Reddit,
or
just Reddit in general? Okay.
NBA Reddit, yeah. I was like, the number one item is, do people actually care this much about Killian Hayes? But I suppose he's become like the meme for a bad player. So
yeah, he was also like the number 7 pick and is waived before the end of his rookie deal. Like that doesn't happen a lot. James Bouknight got waived yesterday too. I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying in terms of lottery picks getting waived. Like this is
like you could take a flyer on certain guys. Like, but I mean, I don't know if Killian Hayes is the option for me, man.
Yeah, I'm
okay.
Just wanted to ask you because we got to ask the question a lot.
Do you want Killian Hayes?
No. I would prefer a good player in that spot. Look, would
Enough said.
Would I find my way to, hey, of course the Raptors like a 6'5" French point guard. Like you could understand it. We have 4 years of a lot of tape of Killian Hayes not being good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
somehow
sorry,
still only 22 though.
Yeah. Well, I think see, this is the thing. So I had 10.4 thousand upvotes.
Wow.
Does
that make you feel good or does that make you feel awful as Killian Hayes?
That makes me feel awful, man. I mean, he's like become a meme player.
I thought maybe it was
like bad,
people are interested in you.
No. It means people are very interested in how bad you are. It's like when Russell Westbrook for a while became a meme player, but at least with Westbrook, it was like, okay, he was formerly great and then he like fell off and, was in a Lakers ecosystem, all that kind of stuff. Like the profile was big. Like this is just like a meme player because he sucks.
Yeah, so, it's tough. This is like, you don't see lottery picks waived on the rookie contracts. This is like George Papagiannis.
Yeah.
Back in the before the Kings became respectable.
By the way, the Pistons, your Pistons, another win last night.
Yeah.
They're
telling you, man, it might not be the number 31 pick.
Damn.
It might be 32 or 33.
I wanted Mark Tatum to say our name first. Anyway, we're going to take another break. I've been your host, Willow. You've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network, brought to you by Campbell's new Chunky Spicy Soup. When we come back, let's check in with Sarah Todd about the new players coming in from Utah. Welcome back to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Wim Lou, joined by co-host Blake Murphy. Balmy, 10-degree day in Toronto. What's going on, man? It's February. This is not right. Anyway, for segment 3, we have joining us on the show, Sarah Todd, Deseret News and host of Unsalvageables, and also Blake Roden here, 2022 Utah Sports Writer of the Year. So Well, I guess congratulations.
That's
It's already
right.
2024, but yeah, Sarah, thanks
Well,
for
she
joining
can't
us on the
win
program.
2024 Sports Writer of the Year here on February 9th, man. Sarah, what's
It's
up?
already 10 degrees. I don't know what anything's possible.
Hey, 2024 is still in play for me.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, so obviously we wanted to bring you in because you cover the Jazz, and the Raptors made a big trade with, relatively big trade with Utah, bringing in Ochai Agbaji, bringing in Kelly Olynyk. Maybe we'll start with Ochai because we have heard a lot of really good things from, Bobby Webster spoke, the Raptors GM, yesterday about Ochai, his character, hard worker, easy guy to work with, good for the culture. We'll start there. What are we getting in Ochai Agbaji as the person, first and foremost?
As a person, Ochai is as good as they come. I mean, he's such a good kid. I mean, that he's not a child, but they're all kids to me at this point. But he's a really, really nice guy. He really, really cares a lot. He is so dedicated. He's really, really athletic. I mean, an example is, last year in his rookie season, he came in and, I mean, he's absolutely like a jacked guy, totally ripped. And then he comes in for summer league this year, and it looked like he had 0% body fat. And I was like, what is this guy doing? Like, how much more did you need to condition yourself? You were already like the most athletic guy on the team. And he just like really, really cares. He's constantly working, total gym rat. And like I said, I mean, like, he's a really good person, a family guy. I mean, he's really sweet. His girlfriend got him a cat for Christmas. So, that's the kind of person that we're talking about.
I'm 100% sold. Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You don't need to apologize. I'm a cat guy as well. Yeah. Sarah, do we know the cat's name?
Raza
Agbaji. All right. Okay. So that's
hard.
That's Ochai as a person. Now, there's obviously an element to this where Utah decided he's not someone that they want to continue investing in developmentally. Now, I know they picked up a first. They picked up Otto Porter and Kyra Lewis as well. But to me, this maybe says something about where Agbaji is in his development here, halfway into his second season. What can you tell us about where that development has maybe stalled or where Utah decided, hey, maybe it's time to give someone else a shot and get another pick in-house instead?
Yeah, I don't actually want to scare Raptors fans at all about that, because I don't think it's necessarily a case of like the Jazz didn't want him anymore. I think that, when you're getting rid of a guy that's 34 and you also want a first-round pick, you have to give up something else that's good. And so, like, that's the way if I was a Raptors fan and I was looking at it, I would be like, well, they had to give us something. And the Jazz didn't have a ton of young players that have like a lot of upside on their roster. You could look at Keontae George and Taylor Hendricks, but I think they're probably higher in the pecking order than Ochai was for the Jazz right now. And so, like, I don't think it's a bad thing that they moved off of him. I think that was it might have been even a little bit of a sticking point, and that they didn't love getting rid of him, but they knew that they had to in order to get what they wanted out of the trade. And so,
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask as a follow-up that can you give us kind of, we've dug into the tape and tried to give people an impression of his game, but you watch him every single game. Where is he at developmentally here, midway through his second season? Obviously, a long time at Kansas. People who are fans of college basketball got to know his game pretty well at the highest levels there, but maybe haven't been as tuned into the Jazz day to day. Where is he at as a player right now?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a transition for him from college to the NBA. I mean, as so many of these like top level college players are, like if you take them and you put them on a team and you put them in a position of like a role player who's not going to have the ball in their hands a lot, that's a huge, huge difference from how they work. Because like most of the guys that get drafted, they're the guy their whole life, right? And so I think that was a difficult transition for Ochai to come to the Jazz and be like, you're going to be kind of a spot-up guy, and we need you to really focus on things on the defensive end. And in that role, Ochai has succeeded. He's excelled. On the defensive side, he's become a really, really good transition defender, and that's not something that he was in college or high school or at any point. It's something that he developed to try to stand out on the NBA floor in a more limited role. And so, I mean, you guys are going to love that. The transition, like the chase down blocks that he has, the timing that he has, like as a help defender, it is really, really good. And so that's what you guys are really going to like. He's in a little bit of a shooting slump right now, but maybe the change is going to kind of get him out of that. As a low volume shooter, it's hard to shoot yourself out of a slump. It takes more time. And so offensively, I wouldn't be very worried about Ochai, and what you're getting is someone who has incrementally gotten better on defense. And like, if you were talking to someone else who maybe like cares about some of the offensive limits of his game, that they might be a little bit lower on Ochai. But like, if you're looking for someone who can be a role player and who's young and is going to last and be there for the future, if you guys are like moving through a rebuild, Ochai is a great player to have.
So that is an interesting developmental piece as the Raptors rebuild here. The other part of this trade is Kelly Olynyk, who, as the Jazz were maybe not traditionally rebuilding, we'll talk in a little bit about the Jazz side of this and where they are now versus where you thought they'd be at the start of the year. But Kelly Olynyk, by all accounts, has been a helpful piece as a culture setter in Utah and as a kind of style and system setter, as an extension of Will Hardy, as that backup centerpiece on the court. How big has Kelly's role been in Utah, and how, everyone in Canada knows Kelly's on-court game really, really well, but what can the Raptors expect if they are asking him to, play a similar on and off-court leadership role to the one he played in Utah the last little while?
Yeah, the first point is that, I know that people in Canada are absolutely familiar with Kelly's on-court game, but that's actually a big piece of him being able to be a culture setter in kind of a real rebuilding situation, because Jazz head coach Will Hardy, he would often say that Kelly is so good at so many things that it's really easy to take him for granted, because when you're trying to develop other guys and you need someone that's just going to adapt to any role, you can put him in any position, he can shoot, he can space, he can pass, he's able to kind of be the Swiss Army knife that like is the connective tissue to everything else you're trying to do on the team. Like, that is so helpful when you're trying to build up young guys and trying to rebuild a team, when you just have a guy that you can plug in to do anything you need. And then on top of that, like as a locker room guy, you can talk to anyone on any one of the teams that he's been on, like following his time in Boston, being in Detroit for a really short time. Everyone there will say it. In Houston, Steven Silas will tell you also, like, having someone there that is going to be even keeled and that people in the locker room are going to respect. And he's not an introverted guy, and he knows how to use his voice with young players and build trust really quickly. Like, he's exactly the type of guy that you need in those situations.
So it sounds, Sarah, like the Utah Jazz will be worse today without Kelly Olynyk. And they also traded away Agbaji and Simone Fontecchio. And they only really brought in Otto Porter Jr., who wasn't playing for the Raptors. And who knows, could be a bio candidate, or maybe he plays some bench 3-and-D minutes for them. And Kyra Lewis Jr., who has mostly spent this year in the G League. When you look at this from the Jazz perspective, now I know that they only keep their pick if it's in the top 10, but they're also around the play-in mix in the Western Conference. What did they try to do here directionally? I know Fontecchio, do a new contract and things like that, but it does seem from outside like they are okay sliding out of that play-in position. Is that a fair read on these moves?
Yeah, absolutely. You're reading it correctly. Like you say, the Jazz are worse off today. They absolutely are, and I think that was the intention. And so, if you're looking at it just in like who won the trade, like the Toronto Raptors got the better pieces, and so that is not a doubt. But I think that was the intention, and so the Jazz are going to feel like that they did what they wanted in this move, because if you make the play-in, if you don't drop out and you win a play-in game and you don't, the pick is, out of the top 10, then that's going to the Thunder. And so if you keep the top 10 pick, and I think that's what the Jazz do, is they don't want the pick to convey to OKC. They want the pick this year. And that's a philosophical, I guess, question. I don't know that I fully agree with it this year. It's very hard for me to see a team with Lauri Markkanen and him, rising and ascending, and the Jazz being one of the hottest teams over the last month and a half in the NBA, and to think that they just want to let that go away. But, that's why I'm not getting paid GM money, I guess.
Yeah. Well, we're having a similar debate here in Toronto, just in terms of convey now, or maybe I guess be competitive is really off the table for the Raptors. Unfortunately, it's not like the Jazz. But I want to ask just two more random questions about Kelly Olynyk. So for me, I was watching, as you get a new player in the roster and you go through his video, and I'm looking through Kelly Olynyk's assists, and I'm just always seeing him post up around the right, like the left, basically at the break, right at the 3-point line break, and he's always there. And I swear, this is like half of his assists are just playmaking at that exact spot. It feels like this is a consistent set that Utah always runs with Kelly in that position to play make. Obviously, there's off-ball screens on the other side and lots of options. But can you just walk me through why I'm seeing a version of that assist like every other assist in Kelly's assist highlight reel?
Yeah, I think, some of that, that facilitating out of that, on the break kind of area, it's kind of like if you're looking at it as how, 10 years ago, guys Kelly Olynyk's size were facilitating from the elbow all the time, right? Not even that long ago. And so if you just extend that out a little bit and you think about the shooting that teams have, and the Jazz, really, really were trying to emphasize space. And so if they could use some interior off-ball screens and loosen guys up, whether it's inside or outside, and they shoot out to the 3-point line, and then worst case scenario, right? Kelly is at that point and he can either do his very slow and weird, which I'm sure you guys are so familiar with, his slow drive, pivot, weird finger roll, and somehow always works for him. He's able to do it from that spot and move inside. Or he's a great shooter too. And so if you put him in that space, all options are available to him. And so I think that, when Kelly's on the floor, that just puts the Jazz in a really good position because they have the shooters available and because they were working with a lot of back cuts on off-ball screens too. It's just a nice visual place to have him. You just have to imagine it as elbow extended out, really.
That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate the explanation. The other question, also super random about Kelly Olynyk. So how often do you see him wearing a snapback, and how many snapbacks does he have at his locker or on his personal at all times?
Yeah, I think that there was we were talking to him about it, I think it was last year, asking him how many there was that he had in general, and he said some crazy number 800.
What?
And it's all right, well, that's too many.
Okay.
So I was watching a Jazz game last week, and someone said, one of the broadcast, I can't remember if it was the play-by-player color, said that on a road trip, he will bring 20 hats with him on a road trip.
So you're telling me he's the PJ Tucker, but with snapbacks instead of shoes?
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%.
Wow.
I mean, we're not talking about just when you see him after a game or in public or whatever. During practice, a full speed 5-on-5 practice, Kelly Olynyk wears a snapback.
All right.
I'm so happy.
It's like Dennis with the beanie, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the
Also,
white
I got to
version.
stop outing myself as on an off night I was watching Utah Jazz games. I got to stop.
No, it's okay. Utah plays great basketball.
Actually,
man.
Sarah, let me ask you, how come if this is what the Jazz were doing and this was direction, I couldn't get my guy Chris Dunn in a trade?
I mean, listen, if you've got a guy like Chris Dunn and he's playing on a minimum contract and you think that you can get to re-sign him, why would you trade that one away?
For me. For me personally. Yeah. Okay, in seriousness, Sarah, I want to round back to something that you said a little earlier. And, you said that you don't necessarily agree with the Jazz bowing out of this play-in position if that's how this ends up going. And I did read your piece, so I'm setting you up for a question I already know your answer for. But the culture risk here with the back-end roster churn, when you come into the season and guys think it's maybe going to be a push for a playoffs, and then while you're in a playoff spot, you sell off. When you're not a free agent destination like Utah is, where do your concerns lie here? Where are the risks in this being a part of your culture as you build back up?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about just role player guys, right? If you think about the Simone Fontecchios, the Kelly Olynyk, and the Ochai Agbajis of the world, the guys that are getting traded off just so the Jazz might be able to get a top 10 pick in a draft that's not that great, if we're being honest. If that's the message and you're already not, the Jazz are not getting a top tier free agent to just sign up and come to Utah. That is not happening. They have a better chance of getting role player free agents to come in and for a couple of years. But if those role players look at Utah and they're well, if you don't convey the pick this year, you got to convey it next year. What if you just decide to sell dudes off the trade deadline and then you end up in Detroit? Or you get stuck on a team that's playing for the draft and not going to prioritize wins, and they sit Lowry down for 12 of the last 13 games of the season. Colin Sexton's out at the end of the season. Jordan Clarkson's out the last 11 of 12 games of the season, so that you can make sure you get into the lottery. Like, is that the team that I'm going to? That's not the team that guys want to be on. And so, there is a certain amount of that you can sell basketball players on. Like, stick with us through this rough point. I know that you want to play and you want to win, but things are going to be better next year, or things are going to be better at this point. But I don't know that the Jazz have clearly defined to anyone when the light at the end of the tunnel will be. And so I think that's just a very precarious situation, especially when you have someone like Lauri Markkanen, who you want to, renegotiate his contract maybe and get an extension with him. Like, is he going to sign up for more losing? Because he's never made the playoffs, and he is entering his prime right now. He's breaking out. And so I would just worry that if you do this any more than this year, that you risk losing guys.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And I was going to ask you next, what is next for the Jazz as they build back up here? And I think a lot of that centers around Lauri Markkanen and their draft capital and things like that. But I think that's a pretty natural place to, the Jazz are in not a similar spot to the Raptors spiritually and the reasoning behind these moves, but in terms of where you are in the standings and what challenges that imposes as you take your next steps. Certainly. Last one, though, Sarah, before I let you go. You were covering the 76ers not that long ago. You were, here in Toronto a bunch during the Raptors championship run where the Raptors defeated the 76ers on the way to winning the NBA championship. Are you surprised? Like, I know you moved to Utah to cover the Jazz. We all have to be flexible. Are you surprised that you're back to covering like a pretty interesting, pretty solid, and maybe good soon team? Like, I feel like you were ready for a rebuild as well, but now you're covering one of the more interesting teams.
The NBA never surprises me, right? Like, before I was covering the Sixers, I was covering the Warriors in the years and including leading up to the 2015 championship. That was the last year that I covered them, was the first year of like the dynasty era. And so, covering them for a couple of years and like going up to that cyclical nature in the NBA does not surprise me. And I always tell people, covering bad basketball for me is just as good as covering good basketball. Like, I will go and watch a JV high school game. I don't care what kind of basketball I'm watching. And so these are all like the best basketball athletes in the entire world. And so like, there's a million things to think about. If you're covering like a team that's playing against a championship team like the Raptors, and the game ends on like the quadruple doink Kawhi shot, like the emotion after that, the team that's losing, that's great to cover. If you're covering a championship team led by an MVP like Steph Curry, that's also a great team to cover. Like, I'll do it all. I don't care.
Well, this is sick of me to do this, but what was that locker room like? Because for the Philadelphia side in 2019, because I think a lot of people here in Toronto knew what the locker room was like in Toronto's locker room, but I guess, I never checked in on what happened in the other one.
Yeah, it's, I think a lot of people know and talk about the emotion of someone like Joel Embiid, right, in the locker room after that. I think that's really obvious. Like, of course, the best player on that team is going to be emotional, and like having that kind of a crushing loss when you can kind of see like, you're right there and you're almost good enough to get over the hump. Like, that's really hard. For me, what was most interesting was actually JJ Redick, and like seeing a guy that you could tell was very close to the end of his career, and like this might be the last team that he could have a chance to maybe be on a title run with. And like, he was very emotional, and you could tell that the weight of like, I just might not get there. Like, it's not in my career plans. Like, that was all setting in all at one time. And he was very emotional. And then, Brett Brown only lasted like another year after that. Like, he was walking out of that arena basically like saying goodbye to everyone. He thought he was probably going to get fired that year. Like, there was just so much going on, and Joel Embiid is one thing, but like, he had his whole career ahead of him. Like, he was MVP last year, right? Like, the best was still ahead of him, and it was for the people that maybe their best wasn't ahead of them that was the hardest to watch.
Fair enough. Okay, that's a great answer. So I appreciate you, Sarah, for joining us on the show. And we'll look forward to asking Kelly Olynyk about snapbacks. I can't wait to get him in an interview and ask him about his favorite
no
snapback.
problem at all. I also Ochai is really uncomfortable if you talk to him about like thirsty TikToks that girls make about him. So that's also fun.
Well, he's clearly one of the most handsome players in the league. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was not intending to ask him about that.
I will look into those.
It's hilarious, though. You should.
Okay. Those are two great leads to go off of. Sarah, I appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime, guys.
There you go. Damn. I was a sicko for asking what was the Sixers locker room like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I'm like, tell me how devastated these guys were. Yeah, these guys who that stupid little dribble handoff with JJ and Embiid that caused so much torment for me for 2 weeks. Yeah, tell me how devastated their emotional handoff was afterwards.
Yeah, it's going to be a minute before there's another feeling like that here. So let's relive the good old days. The thing about the old days, they're still ours.
I'm just sick like that, you know. Welcome back to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Wayne Blue. Last segment of the week, me and Blake Murphy, we have come to the spot where we talk, about our favorite subject, Fred VanVleet. It's unavoidable. Fred VanVleet comes back to Toronto today. Unfortunately, he's unable to play. He's sidelined with injury, but he is in the building. He did take the time to speak with reporters pregame and just kind of reflected on a couple of things. So we wanted to just sort of bring you some of those clips. But before we do that, we also want to let you know that the Canada women's basketball team is 1-1 so far in their Olympic qualifying tournament. As you mentioned, tough day because they really just could have clinched today, if not for, I believe, a 7-point fourth quarter. It was a really tough game. They fell down like 11-0 right away to Spain, fought back, came back, and then Spain came back, and then they fought back. And it was honestly reminding me exactly of when the men's qualified. It was also against Spain. They were down double digits, and, they had some great efforts. But
how'd that one end, though?
Yeah, that was different. That was awesome. That was the paradigm shift. I can't wait for that one.
So the big wrinkle, so Canada could have punched their ticket to the Olympics with a win there, and the table looked a certain way at the end of that game. But Hungary beat Japan today.
It's a big shock, I think.
It at least a moderate shock. Now Hungary's the home team; they're the host team, so like maybe you give them a little bit of a. You anticipate them pulling off an upset or whatever. But what we now have heading into Sunday's final day is a table where all 4 teams are 1-1 and 3 teams qualify for the Olympics. So obviously the 2 games Sunday, which are Canada against Japan and Hungary against Spain, the winners move on. If Canada were to lose that game, though, they're then watching the Hungary-Spain game and I believe rooting for Spain to win since Canada beat Hungary.
Right.
But the big thing is like you control your destiny here by winning you're in against Japan.
Yeah. And of course, you can tune into that. So Canada will play Japan at 8:50 a.m. Eastern on Sportsnet.
Yes.
And if Canada wins, the women qualify to join the men at the Olympics in Paris 2024.
And if they don't, you watch Spain against Hungary and hope for, I believe I have this scenario right, where they would want Spain to win so that they had the tiebreaker against Hungary.
This is Sunday.
Yeah. Ben Schulman and Miranda Aim on the call, Danielle Michaud and Sherman Hamilton in the booth, or in the studio, rather. So
there you go.
It's a pretty big one.
Oh, it's a big one. There's no doubt. I might not even watch EPL on Sunday morning for the first time in 3-4 months.
What a long sport. Got to get up and watch basketball. Got to watch a Super Bowl. Got to watch the NBA afternoon games on Sunday. What a terrible life.
I may or may not tune into the Super Bowl, but I will be there for Usher's halftime performance. I cannot wait. You don't understand how big of an Usher fan I am, man. Love Usher.
I mean, I understand
one of the best
because
of all time.
Yeah, he's great.
All time.
I do understand how big a fan you are because you completely just hand wave like the Super Bowl away. You're like, I'm in there for Usher. Like, I get it. You're not a football fan. I'm not like a NFL hardcore, but like the Super Bowl is like as much a pop culture event as
I'll watch.
Is
there any hoops on that weekend?
There are only 2 games on Sunday, and they're at 2 and 3 p.m. Boston, Miami, and OKC, Sacramento.
Ooh.
They're on at 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock. So you could structure this as a whole day, not leaving the couch, man.
I mean, honestly, unless it's 10 degrees outside, I think I'm totally cool with watching a bunch of sports in the wintertime.
It might be, man. Climate change, I don't...
King's Thunder, too.
Yeah.
Damn.
I don't know what month or temperature it is anymore ever.
gotcha.
Some of that is just like the job and just me in general, not knowing what's going on. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Also, happy Lunar New Year to everybody. All right. Year of the Dragon. You know what I mean? That's not me. Year of the Monkey. But it'll be my turn in 5 more years. Wow. 4 more years. Damn. Getting old. But yeah, happy Year of the Dragon to everyone who celebrates. Anyway, talking about the Houston Rockets. So Fred VanVleet has returned, and unfortunately he's not going to play. He did speak to media, like I mentioned, and we have some clips for you. So here's the first clip from Fred VanVleet just talking about the Raptors' new direction in terms of the rebuild.
Yeah, that's really the only way it was ever going to go. It was just kind of like a matter of when. I think kind of once you set off on that timeline and on that trajectory, like this is what it looks like, and it's hard for, people that are fans of the team or follow the team and people on the team that, were heavily invested in that group. But, yeah, I think it was time to turn over a new leaf, and, I think they're making all the right moves to head in the direction that they want to go in. And, yeah, I mean, again, that's really the only way it was going to go.
It's the only way it was going to go. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was the only way it was going to go. Like Bobby just told us that they came into this year and thought if it went, a better way competitively, and part of the reason to sign a guy like Dennis and not trade OG and Pascal in the offseason was to give it a time. But yeah, I mean, like, look, there were only 3 players on this roster today who were on the roster before the deadline last year. Like this is
wild.
This is a monster, and it's Boucher who he's gonna be here forever. He's the last guy from the championship
I hope
team.
so. Someone called him a Poutine Udonis Haslem, and I feel like it's a little early to make him UD status.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't mind that.
I like having Chris. I like Chris, man.
Yeah, everyone likes Chris, man.
Jamal McGlure was the assistant coach on this team for like 10 years after he stopped playing.
Yeah. Chris was so nice. He's like, "Oh, you want to do a live show? Yeah, I'll come. I will be at your live show. Me, a whole NBA player.
Also, the other difference between
stupid little podcast. So I appreciate you, Chris.
The difference between Chris and UD and late career Jamal McGlure is Chris is still a useful NBA player.
That's what I mean. It's a little too early for that. Maybe in 10 years, if Chris is still around, then he's actually Poutine Poppy, I suppose, in this case. The rebuild. I guess this was the other option, and the Raptors are in that timeline right now, and. One would argue you can do it earlier, whatever. I don't know. This is all hand-wringing over the past because they've already picked their direction. So they picked a different direction. Fred is in a different place. He's in Houston. He talked about his new role and his fit in Houston.
Well, I think I'm just in a better situation now to be myself, you know what I mean? Whereas what I bring to the table is what they needed at the time, you know what I mean? So it's nothing really more than that. These guys wanted a leader. They needed a leader. They needed kind of what I bring to the table and what I provide. And so it's been a perfect fit.
Okay. So that's quite similar to what we heard from Kelly Eco last week when we talked when the Raptors played the Houston Rockets. But, yeah, I mean, just the idea of Fred sort of going to a place where it fits more of his skill set. Like there's more of a need. I guess there's an open invitation for him to lead. Do you feel like that invitation was here?
I mean, he clearly thinks not. And the Raptors moving on.
Is that what we should read from the subtext?
I think so. And if you go back and read Michael Grange's article from when they were in Houston and he caught up with him, Fred gets into a little bit of the hey, maybe he didn't do he took some accountability for it as well. It's like maybe he didn't do as good a job as he could have done with that dynamic. But it's pretty clear based on the way things have gone at the end of last year. And at the time, it felt more like it was on the coaching staff side, but we had heard some friction points throughout the year. And then obviously Fred moves on, and now Pascal and OG aren't here. There's been a huge change in the leadership dynamic and the type and style of voice. And actually, it would be one of the more interesting things to track down the stretch here is who are the leaders on this team? What does that dynamic look like? Because Thad and Otto are gone, who were at least partially supposed to be that. Dennis is gone, who was supposed to be an extension of Darko. Pascal, OG, and Fred are gone, who were the guys who were expected to have the organizational continuity to carry over the culture. It really is, to use dust off an old Masai press conference.
Oh yeah,
culture reset.
Oh okay, yeah.
So we'll see. I'm curious to see how that goes. Mostly from this quote, I'm happy that it's worked with Fred in Houston. We see lots of, if you watch Rockets games, you see lots of clips of him and Alperen Şengün and Fred always grabbing him after and taking him to the side during a timeout and stuff like that. Jalen Green, same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's all just Fred. I think Dylan has helped as well. Dylan more of a lead by example and
Jeff
work
Green.
ethic kind of guy. Yeah, Uncle Jeff,
coming off a championship.
Yeah. who's, I mean, he's going to be in the league till he's like 50, it seems like.
Are we going to get an Uncle Green? Are we going to get Uncle Jeff dunk kind of tonight or what?
Ooh.
Yeah, probably will.
So, yeah, I mean, I hear that one, and I could see how people could look into it and be like, okay, well, they were still very much figuring out what the new leadership dynamic and cultural dynamic was going to be at the end of last year, which is why you fire your coach and move on from a point guard and go out and in every presser talk about resetting or changing the culture and stuff like that. But mostly I hear this, and I'm glad it's a fit in Houston.
I think it's good because, as you mentioned in that interview that he did with Grange, which we also talked to Grange on the show about it, nothing happens in the Raptors without us talking about it, honestly.
Yeah.
When you got to do like 10 hours minimum, it's going to come up. But I like that Fred kind of reflected on the experience and tried to take that and sort of like make sure it didn't happen again in Houston. You know what I mean? Because you saw like lots of instances where like Fred was working out with Jalen Green. Remember they were running hills and stuff like that. This is just during the offseason. Like 2-3 days after he was signed, instantly in Houston, running hills with these guys. Start of the season, everybody got like a Fred VanVleet little like gift pack from everybody. There was like headphones or some other kind of, the standard stuff. Like we've seen NBA players, for example, gift everyone watches. Some of it might also be sponsored, but regardless, just trying to do a nice thing to ingratiate with the group. As you mentioned, some of the in-game moments that they're talking about. Fred also discussed in this interview, we don't have the clip for it, but when he got to Toronto, the Houston Rockets have been here for like a day or already by now. So he took the team out to like the various spots in Toronto to show them around because he's been from here. So those type of things where, you do wonder of like, could he have done that with Toronto, for example, in previous years? Would that have changed anything? Maybe he did do it. It just didn't come to light. Maybe the players weren't as receptive to it. Again, it's a whole big conversation. Again, it's over now, but I'm happy to see that he's succeeding in Houston.
I also think there's a little bit of a difference, too, when you are a team that's been rebuilding and you have young pieces, and then you are dropping in the culture elements with a new head coach and a couple of veterans and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then if you are a team that has that pre-existing structure and is trying to mold that to a new young star and a new era under a new coach and stuff like that. Like the Raptors did end up changing their coach and changing some leaders and stuff, but Houston was like, okay, we have all this like raw Play-Doh and like cool talent and assets and stuff like that. We need to import something to build that. And that was mostly the Ime thing at first. Or it looked like it was only going to be the MA thing at first, and then they ended up being big cap players. So I think that's maybe a little bit of a different dynamic too than when, Pascal, Fred, OG, Chris, like that is an established thing that's been there for years, and you're trying to then take what's already been there and what's extended from Kyle and DeMar. And like on paper, this should have been the way the culture maintains and transitions, but I think maybe they had a little trouble, reworking that once the Play-Doh had hardened up a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
I got you. I got
nice I got a nephew who's gotten into Play-Doh lately. I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, next one.
Speaking of children.
So Fred says he also is Fred VanVleet still tuned into Raptors games? And the answer is a little surprising. Sorry to make this a Sports Illustrated headline. Anyway, this is a clip.
It was a lot more before all the trades, obviously, because it's just such a different team now. But whether I want to or not, my son makes me watch Raptors games. So he's always asking when the Raptors are playing, and we watch games on a daily basis. And he's still got all of the memories of being here, and he loves the mascot, and just he knows the players and things like that. So we watch a lot of Raptors games.
Yeah. By the way, everyone knows Fred's son.
Yeah,
everyone knows. But Blake, tell us the story one more time, please.
Of Fred's son?
Yeah.
Like during the championship?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, Fred's partner was pregnant during the championship, and it was during the Milwaukee series, and Fred had shot very poorly. And as I'm saying this, I'll
look it up for you. Don't worry. You keep telling the story.
So Fred had been struggling, quite a bit in that playoffs run, especially shooting the ball. And then there was a game where he had to leave the team after a game. He didn't miss any time.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you would not miss a playoff game, even for a birth of a child, which is absurd to say. But,
I believe it was after game 3 of the Milwaukee series.
Yeah, that game he shot 1 of 11.
Yeah, so he shot really, really poorly. This was like in the Philly series, it was like, is he out of the rotation? There was a game in the Philly series where he only played like 6 or 7 minutes.
Yeah.
So
it was like Jeremy Lin, maybe? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like maybe we'll give it to Jeremy.
That's how bad it had gotten. And then his son is born in between games 3 and game 4. And he goes like all-nighter. Like, I got to go. I got to be with my partner for the birth of my child. I'm not going to announce this. I'm going to do this low-key, and I'm going to be back in time for game 4.
Because he was in Chicago, so he would just drive back and forth from Milwaukee, which is like an hour and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. So he gets back for actually this part of the series was in Toronto.
This was in Toronto.
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
okay.
So, but that was convenient for later.
Yes, it was.
But,
yes.
Okay. So he comes back, and game 4, he knocks down all 3 threes, has a good game, and then in game 5 he breaks Matt Moore, HP basketball, by going 7 for 9 on threes, and then goes 4 of 5 in the clinching game 6. So he goes from he had been shooting 19% over the first 15 playoff games.
Let me just give you the full numbers. I'm looking at the exact same ones right now. 15 games played, the first 15 games of the playoff series. So the Orlando series, the Philadelphia series, first 3 games of Milwaukee, 4 points per game on 25% shooting from the field, including 19 from 3. 2 rebounds, 2 assists. Like, I mean, he did a good job guarding JJ Redick at times, but like, holy, it was tough.
And then
the legendary Fred Jr. was born. And then
from there, so not only was he was crazy hot in the Milwaukee series, but he was also very, very good in the Golden State series.
Absolutely.
Getting the Steph Curry box and 1 assignment.
Mm-hmm.
So after those 15 games with those terrible numbers, the final 9 games of the playoff run, he averaged 15 points on 51% shooting overall, 53% on threes, and 2.4 assists to less than a turnover a game.
I mean, again, everyone knows this already. This is great. I just like hearing it again. You know, like tell me again, Grandpa, about when Freddie Jr. was born. But no, seriously, I mean, Game 6, of course, the 22 points, including 12 in the fourth quarter, like the primal scream when he finally let it out when he crossed over. I forget who it was. I think Quinn Cook.
Bloody eye.
Yeah, and it was like the Warriors were confusing their coverage, and then he crossed it up and he pulled. Oh man. I mean, this is why when people are like, "Why do people talk about Fred?" It's like, I don't know, man. He's a part of our history, like the Canada thing.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Whatever. I don't want to rehash the conversation around Fred like the last 18 months or 2 years or whatever. But like generally, if someone played a role on your team winning a championship, I'm gonna revisit that as many times as I like you. You are still the other day in this office watching YouTube mixes of the 2019 championship. Like
till this day,
exactly.
Till this day, until honestly the day I die, I'll be watching that highlight. I'm not kidding, man.
All right, what else we got? So we got another clip in terms of looking ahead to the future. Of course, Scotty Barnes named an All-Star. Fred VanVleet's reaction to it.
Well, he's been there, right, with the Rising Stars and things like that. So he's a little acclimated to the weekend and things like that. But it'll be good for him to kind of be in that locker room and be in that group amongst peers and amongst the other top players in the NBA. So I'm happy for him, and he deserves it. He's playing extremely high level this year, and it's the first of many for him.
My question is, who was so messy to ask Fred about Scotty again?
Well, okay, so I actually do want to clarify, because if anyone hadn't heard this yet and they saw that clip start with the it wasn't what do you think of Scotty being an All-Star. The question was phrased as what can being at All-Star do for Scotty?
Gotcha. Okay, so, not messy at all. Then.
Yeah, so it was more about like you had the experience as well. So I just want to be clarified, because obviously people are going to go for that and like, oh, if he got asked just about Scotty being an All-Star and he had a long pause at the beginning, it was more about the All-Star experience and what that can do for a guy.
First of many, man. It's gonna be great.
Mostly just happy that Fred agrees with us. We have the same ballot. This Scotty Barnes deserves to be on the All-Star team. I mean, look, it's good. Obviously, you want guys to be happy for each other. You want guys to be happy for their former teammates and stuff like that. And he's right. Scotty should be there. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Are we going to be on a hug watch? Are we going to see if he's going to hug him?
I mean, he's not
he
playing,
did that after.
so it might be, and like they've already played.
Bench.
Yeah.
He's going to walk through. You know how the Raptors arena is scheduled, where both teams have to walk past the same bench to get to the same tunnel?
I'm more curious what kind of reception I'm going to get, because I wasn't down to shoot around. I want some dab.
Oh, you want a Fred VanVleet dab?
I want the like. Who was with you in the unsigned summer league post game tunnel? In 2016.
Right. Talk about it.
Yeah, I don't actually. I'm just messing around.
Where you guys had Thomas and Mack, or the other gym, the small gym?
So when I found out the news that he had signed, was at Thomas and Mack. Was the big one, not the Cox Pavilion.
But Cox Pavilion is tiny. Like, it probably seats like 500 people.
There's no such thing as a one-on-one there, because
executives.
Yeah, you can't do a one-on-one at Cox Pavilion because everyone in the arena can hear your conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Well, I'm actually going to ask you more questions about that in a second. But this last one, is Fred VanVleet going to react to the video montage that the Raptors obviously will have prepared for him when he plays later tonight?
No, I don't. But my boy Tris put together a nice video for me, so it kind of gave me like a little warm-up to it. So hopefully I don't get too emotional. I'm not a big crying type of person, but I'm worried that it might creep up on me. So hopefully not.
What's going on? So what's going to be in this tribute video?
Okay, so first of all, shout out to Tristan,
Shout out
Fred's
to
video
Tristan.
guy,
Yeah.
and shout out to Liban, who wrote a great piece on Tristan's rise from literally getting banned from Scotiabank Arena for sneaking a camera in as a kid from Scarborough trying to make content at Raptors games, to now having worked for the Raptors and now being Fred's kind of personal video guy. Terrific video.
Yeah.
So
also, cheap plug, there's also a great interview with Tristan on this podcast feed if you search back to last summer, but keep going.
Yeah. So in terms of what's in the video, I mean, Tristan kind of nailed it already. Like, I love the shot of starting from the Raptors 905 locker room.
Yeah.
Because that, I maybe would have even gone back to the summer league locker room, although I don't think even open gyms allowed in there, because they are not professional caliber locker rooms on the Cox Pavilion side. But no, it's cool, man. I think obviously it's going to be heavy on the championship stuff. You'll sprinkle in some of the all-star stuff after, but this guy's a key part of the franchise for a long time. And in addition to being a part of the championship and a part of what they thought at one point would extend the competitive window with him and Pascal and those guys, like him and Pascal really are these kind of avatars for, yes, the Raptors culture and their success as a championship team, but they took these guys who were like undervalued and slept on a little bit. And those, I really do tie them together in my head. And I know Pascal was still a first round pick. It's not like nobody thought Pascal and like, even though it was considered a reach.
I'll put a context on this. His agent once told me that 2 teams physically scouted Pascal. 2 NBA teams out of 30.
Okay. I mean, he was, all the like draft rankers had him mocked to go in like the early 40s. It's not like he was like not
No, but I mean, when you're talking about 2,
yeah,
it's absurd.
Yeah, it is. And like part of that is like Hollinger's written about this, like how some teams are just like
hard to catch, I guess.
On an island, basically. Like if you're New Mexico, there's nobody, you're not playing against other players who are worth scouting, and you like as in terms of a scouting road trip, don't make sense. Anyway, Fred and Pascal to me are kind of the avatars of the amount of player development success the Raptors had. And whether that was talent identification, whether that was player development, whether that was the success of the G League, whether that was all these things together, whether it was just the players, you just found 2 special guys who were able to turn. It's incredible that Pascal has quite literally the greatest, maybe not the greatest, but one of the greatest player development stories of all time. And at times, he was arguably not even the best player development story on his own team. Like Fred was different because like everyone knew what Fred was coming out of college. They just didn't think it would translate to the NBA. Whereas Pascal,
and not athletic.
Whereas Pascal completely changed who he was as a player and continued developing.
Sure.
But Fred's story as, kind of like an ultimate underdog, similar to, and even like the Kyle comparisons, like Kyle was still a first round pick out of Villanova. Like people thought Kyle would make it.
Kyle was just a hothead and also tore his ACL. It happens. You know what I mean?
For him to go from undrafted guy to I'm going to use summer league to play my way into a $50K guarantee to try out for this team. And if not, I'm going to be one of the first guys to go to the G League. It's pretty crazy that like you mentioned it earlier to Bobby, literally the highest paid undrafted guy of all time. And one of the very few to make an all-star team. Okay, Ben Wallace. Cool.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of them, man.
There really
Dennis
aren't a lot of
Rodman.
them. There you go.
Like, I think there's one more I'm forgetting. But anyway, it's pretty special. It's pretty cool.
Look, I hear where you're coming from. Totally. I don't think there needs to be that much justification. I think like his story is objectively cool, which leads into my final question on this. Do you have a personal favorite Fred VanVleet moment or interaction as media? Because he was the media's favorite.
Also, like,
which I don't even think is untrue, by the way. Fred was really a great quote.
Yeah, so, I mean
Ben Taylor was terrible tonight.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
That's a good one.
I'm going to do the same thing I did with Pascal and pick a stupid G League memory.
No, go ahead. I love it.
So
man.
during the 2016-2017 season, the Raptors they're coming off the conference finals when this is the last year where they allowed the G League playoffs and the NBA playoffs to overlap. So Fred VanVleet is up with the Raptors for that series against Milwaukee. They need him. He's on the fringes of the rotation. He might get used. And then the 905 get down 1-0 in the G League finals. And they send him down. Yeah. And it's basically like Fred does not need the G League reps at that point. No. They're like, go get us that title. We want the 905 title. And he basically told me that. He's like, I got sent down to bring back the title, not because I needed the reps or whatever. And then like he's on a plane right back to Milwaukee after to close it. Actually, the night that they won the championship, they're all celebrating. Yeah. This is, I'll use this as my favorite one. And this was at the time more of a Stackhouse and Dan Tolzman one, but Fred and Pascal were there too, and Bruno. That game ends. They're all shooting champagne. They're celebrating their 905 championship. And off to the coach's room on the side, Raptors Bucks game 6 is on, as the Raptors almost blew that close.
Totally
They
remember,
nearly
we were up
blew
30.
the 20 point.
Yeah, we were up
So
30.
like everyone is watching that as they're kind of celebrating, and obviously the guys who are part of the Raptors are watching it a little more closely. So that was that was really cool. Obviously the championship is the championship, but that moment with those G League guys,
we had a man who was
cool.
popping bottles at the Hershey Center parking lot. That's amazing. Yeah. My personal favorite one is actually something you can find on YouTube. Me and Fred actually we drafted 3-on-3 teams to go up against each other of Raptors players. And I had Team Kyle. He had Team Fred, obviously. And the funniest thing about the interview was we were literally in the back of a Foot Locker, the one that's across the street from Eaton Center.
Yeah.
And so it's like literally a closet. So the camera is like maybe a meter away from us. And so the shot is super tight. And also when I'm sitting down, I'm very tall. I'm literally a foot taller than Fred sitting down in that interview. You can go look for it on YouTube. It's me and him drafting 3-on-3 teams. But anyway, time now for Between the Lines, brought to you by Bet Rivers. Take a chance. What do you got for us, Blake?
Yeah, Raptors are 2-point favorites. Over-under set of 233.5. On the Rockets side, Fred VanVleet, Tari Eason, Steven Adams all out, as they will be for a little bit here. On the Raptors side, Jonte's still questionable. Kelly Olynyk and Ochai Agbaji are questionable as well. As Bobby told us earlier, they're here. They have to pass their physicals, and then the players in Utah have to pass their physicals as well.
Otto's got to pass his physical?
I got a lot of jokes about that on Twitter when I tweeted that up.
We can't wait that one.
So some unknowns there. The Rockets obviously just beat the Raptors by 29.
Yeah, they did.
But they did that with Fred, and the Raptors had no RJ, and it was the first game back for Quickly and Jakob Poeltl. Without Fred, the Rockets go from a plus 3.3 net rating to a minus 4.9 net rating. That is a top 40 mark in the league in terms of impact per possession based on EPM. So Fred's a big loss for them, even if you like the pieces that are still there.
Yeah, I think from the Raptors side, the biggest thing is the last game, they just couldn't protect the paint at all. And Jakob got absolutely schooled by Şengün. He fouled out in 20 minutes with 6 fouls, obviously. That was the first game back. Since then, Jakob's been really, really good defensively. He's been a big part of what's kept the Raptors competitive since that game. Let's just put aside the Pelicans game. That didn't happen, although Jakob did actually win his matchup. But in any case, Jakob more in rhythm, I think that's going to help a lot defensively. Of course, it's going to be against the Houston team that has a lot of great athletes, right? You look at Jalen Green, you look at Cam Whitmore, Amen Thompson. Like, they're going to come at you. But as you have some rim protection back there, it'll help a lot. I actually kind of like the Raptors to take this one tonight.
Yeah,
Get some revenge, has to play with some pride, Trade deadline's over, all the excuse out the window. Let's just focus on the task at hand. Take Raptors -2. That was Between the Lines, brought to you by Bet Rivers. Take a chance. And that does it for us today. I've been your host, Willow. You've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network, brought to you by Campbell's new Chunky Spicy Soup. It's time to get fired up. Make sure you find The Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. And please rate and review the show. Big thanks to our producers this week, Mark Boffo. Appreciate all the work you've done for us, man. Ahmed Maan, our board producer, Derek Rendale, Jennifer Rolnick, David Sis, Jared Manitat helping behind the scenes. Thanks to our guests, Bobby Webster, Sarah Todd, and we will talk to you next week.